Hi, I'm Tim Brick, the Managing Director of the Arroyo Seco Foundation, and I want to welcome you here today to the premiere of Against the Current. This is really a historic event. We're putting steelhead on the agenda for the Los Angeles River. We're restoring habitat for these native fish in downtown Los Angeles. And so that's the story that Against the Current tells and that we're going to talk about today. We have the experts who have made the program work, and we want you to look upon this as a journey that we're all taking. Just as the steelhead have gone back and forth, up and down the river from the Pacific Ocean to the San Gabriel Mountains for millions of years, we need to make a journey too, and we need to do our part to restore conditions and better streams and watersheds for the native fish and the other species. That's the future. And as we welcome the steelhead back to the Los Angeles River, we also welcome river stewards and recreational opportunity and clean river systems, as well as healthy communities that are more in tune with nature, in tune with our natural heritage, and in tune with our historical roots. So now we begin right away. We're going to go to the video itself, Against the Currents.
When you think of Los Angeles, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Sunshine? Movies? Traffic? That's what most people would say. But I really think about the river. I think of the wildlife and biology that used to flourish throughout our great city. I think of the fish, the native fish like the steelhead trout that used to enjoy the LA River. In recent years, there's been a new focus on revitalizing the river, but often the key element for that is forgotten: the fish. Is it possible that native fish can find their way back to the river? Will we welcome them back? Native fish in the LA River, particularly the steelhead trout, began to dwindle just about 100 years ago. For several million years before that, the trout would swim back and forth from the salty Pacific Ocean up the river to the cold, fresh water in the San Gabriel Mountains to spawn a new generation. But as the human population exploded, people crowded in on the river, and then occasionally, floods came. Without any concern for fish and wildlife, dams were built, and the river was lined with concrete channels. There wasn't any room for fish anymore. As a result, native fish disappeared, and the prime species, the Southern Steelhead, is endangered today. But now, guided by scientists, restoration design engineers, nonprofits, and governmental agencies, the LA River Fish Passage and Habitat Program is studying how to bring native fish back to life right in downtown Los Angeles, a 4.8-mile stretch of the river from the Elysian Valley to Washington Boulevard. Can the barren concrete channel be modified to restore stream habitat and bring back fish? The experts are studying flow, habitat, barriers, water quality, and all the elements necessary to let the river live again. A flourishing, more natural stream zone and a path to the upper river tributaries like the Arroyo Seco and Tujunga Canyon can help create a more sustainable river and enrich us and future generations. It's a big dream. It could be the key test of the LA River restoration efforts. Please contact us to be informed of our progress and learn how you can get involved.
All right. Now, was that inspiring or what? I think it was worth the wait. I hope so anyway. And we apologize for the technical glitches. But we have here the filmmaker who actually made the film, Sean Cross, to say a few words about his experience.
Hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Sean Cross. I created and crafted the film in collaboration with a lot of amazing people, Wendy, Tim, and everybody else, all the other organizations that made it possible. So thank you to everybody. One of the main challenges, one of the biggest challenges was actually getting all the drone footage because of weather. It was raining almost every day I tried to go out. And it was a big adventure and feat to accomplish. And I think it really came through in the video. One of my biggest passions in life is adventuring, the environment, the outdoors. And it's such a privilege to be able to combine both of those things and create this kind of video to educate people like you watching, to educate people in the community, and to really spread the word about the steelhead and the LA River, because I feel like not many people know about that at all. So it's a great privilege and I'm very proud of it. So thank you to everybody.
They did a terrific job, Sean, and we really appreciate your good work. You really brought inspiration to it. And I love the animation. The animation is just really so cool, and it just shows really what happened in such a wonderful graphic way. So you really captured, I think, the spirit of the fish, the history, as well as the future of the fish. So now we're going to move to some presentations with some of the people who are actually making the program work. It's going to be really in-depth discussion about what the program consists of and how you can get involved in the future. And we're going to start off with Wendy Katagi. And so with that, Wendy is with the Stillwater Sciences, and she's running their technical work in putting the project together. So there we go. You're up, Wendy.
Yes, so we're really excited. This LA River Fish Passage and Habitat Structures Design project is part of a larger program to bring back steelhead to this watershed and to implement native species recovery, biodiversity, and to implement policies, programs, and plans that have been with us for over 20 years. Really, it's all about being good stewards of our watershed and our rivers. And when we bring back steelhead, which is a keystone species in the ecological pyramid, we bring back ecosystem health to our communities so that we can all thrive together. And cleaner flowing rivers mean a lot to Angelenos, not only for fish and wildlife, but for our families and our future generations. And this Fish Passage project is a pilot. So it really kind of starts our first steps in the city of Los Angeles with the intent that this can be replicated up and down the watershed and in other urban channels, which are also struggling to recover and really open up opportunities for the communities to face the river and to have access to nature. And the goal is for the fish to be able to live out their entire life cycle. So from the headwaters in Pasadena and the upper San Gabriel Mountains to Hunga Wash and Arroyo Seco, all the way down to Long Beach at the mouth of the river near the aquarium of the Pacific, the fish need to be able to migrate up and down to the ocean on their journey several times. So the areas in between those 2 points, is it showing? So the project area, the Soft Bottom River, just as you look up from downtown, there's the Soft Bottom, all the way down to Piggy Backyard. This project is focusing on the 4.8 miles from that Soft Bottom reach down to Washington Boulevard. And one of the key areas is the Arroyo Seco confluence, where there's so much opportunity working with the Army Corps, with the county and the city, and all of the folks that are very focused on the river to revitalize the river. These are some pictures that show graphically the vision for greening not only the channel, but also along the channel and connecting to the parks like Elysian Park. Here's another representative rendering of the Arroyo Seco confluence, which is part of the Army Corps and City of LA's ecosystem restoration project. And the connections for the fish are really critical because the fish need to migrate from the ocean through the river, LA River, and up the Arroyo Seco to their spawning grounds in the headwaters. Other concepts that are going on throughout the city of Los Angeles and even in other cities are things like daylighting or removing concrete from drainages that empty right into the river. And these create, really from a historic perspective, areas where the steelhead used to have holding ponds, resting areas, areas to forage, post-storm events where they need some shelter and holding before they can continue their sprint or run up the river. Hollenbeck Park and the lake there and the connection to the river is another targeted area where the city and others are trying to bring back healthy water quality, healthy communities and connections. So this is another targeted area where we could see steelhead habitat in the way of pools, riffles, and runs. And one other big concept is the piggyback yard area, where we are seeing a huge transformation of rail facilities to a giant park with wetlands and connections to the river as well. The other part that we're working on is connections with the metro bikeways, recreation, access, and things like that. So this is all part of the bigger picture to transform the channel from a purely flood-based safety infrastructure to something that includes fish passage, habitat structures, and the ecological benefits that we see when we bring back river systems and natural systems to our cities. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Andrea to share about the GIS story map.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you everyone for participating today. We're really excited about presenting preliminary results at what point we are with this project. And for this project, of course, we have also been developing communication material to promote the project, to which you guys are participating right now. Let me share my screen. So we are actually really excited by the fact that many people inside and outside the Los Angeles area have actually, this project has captured their attention and interest, thanks also to many promotional materials that were developed, including a front page article in the Los Angeles Times that was published last October, written by Louis Hagen, that promote the project, but also activities that were developed in collaboration and partnership with our project partner, including the Friends of the Los Angeles River, who last October, as part of their River Edge Return to the River initiatives, give an opportunity to Wendy to provide a short video that described the project. And also the Arroyo Seco Foundation, thanks to this video that we are promoting right now. And also we are discussing with the Aquarium of the Pacific for the opportunity to insert a snippet of our project in their educational video that is part of their permanent exhibition for Southern California steelhead recovery. But also we are excited about two other communication material. One is our project webpage that you can all access on the Council for Watershed Health webpage. And this is the link that I'm going to share also later in the chat, watershedhealth.org/LARW-fish-passage. And this is actually, I'm going to open the web page, which is here. Basically, the web page includes information on the purpose, the goal, and objectives of the project, as well as more details on future initiatives to promote the project and events that are related to the planning and also future implementation for the project. And the web page also provides direct access to key resources. In particular, there is a section about resources right here. Sorry, I have too many windows open here. And in the resources section, there are several products that actually you can simply access and download and share with other people that are interested in this product, particularly a flyer for the project profile, and the Q&A fact sheets. And also there are the final results in a technical memorandum that actually AJ is going to present in a couple of minutes about the conceptual ecological model for steelhead, a limiting factor analysis for steelhead in Los Angeles River watershed. This is the final technical memorandum is about 100 pages. And also here is the link for the GIS story map that we develop as an ancillary product to the webpage that you can either access here, or if you scroll up at the beginning of the page, right below the study area, here is the direct link to the story map. Get the full story, recovering steelhead trout population in the LA River watershed. You click here and it will take you directly to the story map, which was basically created to help us tell the story of the steelhead in Southern California and specifically in the LA River watershed. And also was created to help us describe the project in more details and basically to create the story. So the story map for an easier navigation is structured in 6 sections that you can all access here. At the top, there is a menu icon. Those are the 6 sections. Now you can those are ideally, you can just follow them chronologically, one next to the other. But if you're interested in a particular section, you can just click on each of the section and read about it singularly. But basically, we start with the intro to the project, which is an overview and a brief introduction of basically where, what, and why we are conducting this project. And for those of you, actually, I saw in the chat that were asking how we can access the video again. In the story map, actually, the first video that you will find is the video against the current that you can, again, share with everybody who is interested in this project. The second section of the story map is the project overview, which is the more technical component of this story map that include information and detail about the goals, objectives, the partners, the founders, and the work plan and the timeline. This project is planned for completion in December of this year, 2021. And then there is a section about the overview of the Southern California steelhead population, particularly the DPS population, followed by a brief overview on the steelhead in the Los Angeles River watershed, section that we call the past, present, and future of steelhead in the LA River watershed. And then the last 2 sections are a summary of the steelhead limiting factor analysis and conceptual ecological model. Here you will hear more in this presentation thanks to AJ in a couple of minutes, but basically here you can find a table format, the main finding of this technical memorandum that again you can download in the resources section in the project webpage. And again, at the end of my talk, I will just share in the chat all these useful links. And finally, we have the next step for the project that include lesson learned and recommendation, but also how are we going to move next steps in terms of planning and implementation. And for those of you who are interested in having a stronger understanding of how you can get more involved with this project, particularly for the next step, I will encourage you to please contact me by email or Wendy. Also, keep checking our webpage and our story map. And also in the webpage, forgot to tell you that if you scroll down, there is an event link. Now, we are planning to put organize more events in the spring and in the summer. Unfortunately, we're not able to organize all these events last year because of the pandemic, but hopefully things are going to improve soon. So stay tuned, because there is more that is coming in terms of outreach and education, and there is more that you can participate and be involved into this project. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out to me or Wendy. And thank you, and I'm going to pass it back to Wendy.
Okay, I think I'm up next. Thanks, Andrea, for the great overview of the story map and other resources. I'm AJ Keith. I'm a fisheries biologist and aquatic ecologist with Stillwater Sciences. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can figure this out here. And show you a little about, we'll get into a little more detail on the steelhead and their habitat. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen? Yeah, great. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I've been working with our project partners. Let me see if I can get this. Okay. Yeah, I've been working with our project partners, including many of the people that you've heard from already here today, on improving our understanding of steelhead in the LA River, with the objective of answering some key questions that'll help us make progress toward bringing steelhead back. So we know that steelhead used to live in the river because we have historical records, including accounts and photographs of people catching them, both in the mountain tributaries and in the main stem, amazingly enough. The photo on the left is what the habitat in one of the tributaries, the Arroyo Seco up near Pasadena, used to look like roughly 100 years ago, a little more. And remarkably, a lot of the Arroyo Seco still looks like this today, or very close to this. On the right is a photo of the last documented steelhead caught in the main stem LA River in the downtown area. And that was in about 1940. We also know that conditions in the watershed, and particularly the main stem, where the river flows through the cities in the urban area, have changed a lot since then. On the left here, you can see what the river, a section of the river near Elysian Park looks like today. And on the right, so that's on the left, and on the right is a map that we've compiled showing some of the potential migration barriers to steelhead. And those are not only dams throughout the system, but also portions of the, the concrete flood control channel, like you heard a little bit about from Wendy a little earlier. Another way we looked at how things have changed over time in the watershed is, to look at historical photos of certain locations. This is the mouth of the river in Long Beach, where it empties into the ocean. And you can see on the left, starting in 1928, there was still some sand. There was a beach and a sandbar. The river, as you can see by the blue line, it kind of, it moved around, it meandered a bit. It had a less controlled channel. And as things progressed into the 60s and through the century into the 2000s, it changed quite a bit and became really, really different. And this presents, challenges for steelhead and other native fish. So we also know, what we do know is a lot about the habitat requirements of steelhead. And we know this from, other systems, other research, both in Southern and Central California, and also the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere. And we know a lot about how steelhead complete their freshwater life cycle. They need good quality freshwater habitat to spawn. So they're a good ecological indicator. They need a migration pathway for the adults to move up from the ocean and the young to move back downstream again to the ocean where they grow to adulthood. And the steelhead won't thrive in their freshwater habitats if water temperatures are too warm, water quality is poor, or the food supply in their upstream rearing habitats is not good. So these are things that we know about steelhead, but until our team started really studying the LA River and how things have changed over the last 100 years or so, we didn't know much about what would be needed to bring the steelhead back. So the first thing we did was take an in-depth look at the current habitat conditions in the river and the tributaries. And we compared those conditions to, historical conditions where we had that information and to the conditions needed by each of the steelhead's freshwater life stages. And again, those are the adults migrating upstream from the ocean, spawning and incubation of the eggs up in those mountain tributaries, rearing by the fry and the juveniles, the little guys in the mountain tributaries after they hatch, and then those juveniles making their way or out migrating to the ocean. And so all this work and this information that we gathered allowed us to identify what we call limiting factors for each of the freshwater life stages of the steelhead. In other words, these limiting factors are things in the environment that could prevent steelhead essentially from doing what they need to do to survive to the next life stage and to grow. For example, we wanted to know, are there limitations in the LA River that could prevent the adults from getting upstream to their spawning habitat in the mountain tributaries? Or if not prevent them, are there things that could limit, limit the amount of time, limit the window in which they can move upstream? Also, we wanted to know what conditions in the river could prevent the young steelhead from moving downstream or reduce their survival while they're doing that. So here are some of the key findings of our limiting factors analysis. And the big one is that, or one of the big ones is that the flow patterns in the river really have been altered, by water uses and also by the, so flow patterns have been altered by urbanization and water uses, and there are barriers to upstream migration. And those include, the dams and the channelized concrete sections that Wendy mentioned before. Velocities get really high and the water depth is really shallow, and this presents, a problem. And so high water temperatures in the main stem, those can also be issues. But another thing we found is that there is spawning and rearing habitat in the tributaries. And, if we can get the fish up into these tributaries, they have a really good chance of completing their life cycle. So this is part of the information that we've compiled, and together with what we know about steelhead physiology and ecology, it allowed us to develop a set of hypotheses that we call our conceptual ecological model. And this is just, it's just our way of putting together our thinking and the best available information to answer some key questions, like, what times of year and river conditions allow upstream passage by adult steelhead, how long we think it would take for an adult steelhead to move upstream to the restoration site that Wendy showed you earlier, and even how long it would take to move farther upstream into the spawning habitat. Other things that we've addressed in our conceptual ecological model include the reasons why we think the main stem LA River and the estuary are not currently good rearing habitat for juveniles, and other things as well. We can, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to follow up and provide more detail later. But for now, these findings have allowed us to develop these designs for restoring the river channel that we think will improve conditions for upstream migration by adult steelhead. And this information has also allowed us to develop recommendations for additional work that needs to be done to recover the steelhead population in the river. So in addition to the work we're doing in the main stem, we're also working in the tributaries and the headwaters, focusing on recovery not only of steelhead, but other native fish, including hopefully reestablishing resident trout populations that will contribute to the persistence of the steelhead population, since they are really the same species, they're just different life history types. And so in summary, while there's a lot of work to be done, we're really making great progress toward restoring steelhead and other native fish to the river. And we're really lucky to be joined by a lot of great partners working toward the same goal. And these include government agencies and university researchers, the National Marine Fisheries Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, for example, working on recovery planning and associated studies, the Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers, University of California, Cal State, and other researchers doing planning and recovery efforts. And of course, really critical to these efforts are the advocacy groups, Council for Watershed Health, Arroyo Seco Foundation, and Friends of the Los Angeles River. All these partners are critical to the success of this work. And with that, I will turn it over to Liliana, who will tell you more.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Great to be here virtually with everyone and see some familiar faces. I'm Liliana Grego. I'm the Director of Policy Advocacy and Engagement for Friends of the LA River, or FOLAR. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge how incredible and inspiring this project is. It's great to see everyone's enthusiasm in the chat, and I think it just speaks to what a great project this is. So we're really grateful to be working with this amazing team to try to bring the steelhead back. You know, we're really lucky as FOLAR to be able to work on the ground with community members and really, you know, speak to folks here, listen to them, be a resource to answer any questions. And, you know, a lot of times people are always really surprised about the fact that there's even fish in the river. You know, obviously acknowledging that there are a lot of folks that live along the river and have been there for generations and have their own special and unique relationship with the river. But there are a lot of folks out there that are really unfamiliar with the river. And when you tell them that fish actually exist in the river, that always just excites them and surprises them. You know, we have an education program where we take students down to the river, and when a student sees a fish swimming at the river's edge for the first time, their face just lights up. And when we're at events talking to people and people are asking us like, what can you even do at the LA River? Like, what is there to do there? And you tell them about the recreation zones, and you can go kayaking there, you can go bird watching, you can go fishing there. It's always such a surprise. And I think because the river is disguised a little bit with the concrete, with the channelization, and it's hard for people to process that the LA River is actually a river. It's actually a living waterway. And you know, that's why this project is so important, because it helps strengthen our relationship with the river and just make those connections. And it's also multi-beneficial, right? When we're creating habitat for the fish, we're also promoting community health. These spaces then serve as outdoor classrooms for students to come and learn. And then it also helps us create a more resilient river as we continue facing the effects of the climate crisis. So we're really excited to see this project and see the progress that it has made and continues to make, and really hope to see more projects like this be carried out along the river and throughout our watershed. So thanks so much. Happy to see all these people here, and I will pass it over to Tim, or to Edward.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Edward Belden here. I'm with the LA River Works office. We're in the mayor's office, City of Los Angeles mayor's office. And as Mayor Garcetti likes to remind us, Los Angeles is a river city. The LA River and its waters have been the source of life for generations, and the city was born on its banks. But as we've seen over the past 100 years, as we've grown, we lost some of that connection to the river. But as you saw in our video and the great work that everyone's doing here today, we're now bringing that connection back, and we're bringing back the people to the river, but more importantly, we're bringing the fish back to the river. As a council member, Mayor Eric Garcetti guided the development of the LA River Revitalization Master Plan that recognized the importance of turning the city back towards the river so that communities could really thrive with natural spaces. And then less than 5 years ago, it seems so long ago, but the mayor was instrumental in pushing the city, Congress, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, with great support from our nonprofit partners and other organizations here in LA, to authorize the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Plan. Now it's a project, it's also known as Arbor, so that we could really bring back habitat to the heart of the city. And I'm really excited about the partnerships and collaborations and the journey, as Tim said, on the Fish Passage and Habitat Project with the Council for Watershed Health, Stillwater Sciences, to find those options that will help us achieve the goals of Arbor, so that we can bring back multiple species, not just fish, but maybe some really important endangered birds as well, to the urban environment. And we're looking forward to the next steps to implementation and overcoming all the physical, the agency, and the funding barriers that we're going to have to overcome to make this important pilot project really happen. So on behalf of the mayor, I want to thank all those that helped with the production of this really remarkable film. And special thanks, of course, to the Arroyo Seco Foundation, Tim and Chris, and to Folar. Thank you to Wendy, AJ, Andrea, Liliana, and thank you also to the project's funders and collaborators. The Wildlife Conservation Board has been instrumental in helping to move this forward. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation too, and really starting the initial studies on this, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who's our partner on making sure Arbor can get accomplished. The best way we will know that this journey and dream of the restoration of the LA River has been successful is when children can experience nature and learn about resiliency by going to the river's edge and watching steelhead trout swimming against the current. Thank you.
Well, that was terrific. Thank you so much. Each of these presentations was really quite outstanding. Now we have some time for questions and answers or discussion. And so we'd like to kind of go through the chat and see if you have a question that you'd like to ask, and you can direct it at one of the speakers, go ahead and do so, add it to the chat, and we'll try to get to it. So,
I can address it briefly. The Taylor Yard G2 area is part of the overall Arbor area and location. So there are elements of and potential habitat modifications to that area, and where the Glendale Narrows is there. This area currently, the project right now that we're talking about with Stillwater and Council for Watershed Health, ends just at about the Arroyo Seco, where it's just where the and where the soft bottom starts and stops. So just nearby that. So there may be some opportunity in the future though to make sure that the connections exist, and both those projects are in a really good design stage right now.
okay, very good. So, now there was a question about Frank Gehry's plan for the lower LA River, and I think it'd be best if we avoided that topic today. Since we're trying to be totally positive about restoration of the Los Angeles River. That is the natural restoration of the Los Angeles River. And I think that really that's kind of the context and the significance of what we're doing today, because you really evaluate the health of the river and the success of restoration programs ultimately by what happens to the fish and wildlife and the water quality, as well as people's opportunity to enjoy the river. So that's really what we want to focus at with regard to today's presentation, with regard to the steelhead. Now, Michael Atkins asks, what's the next step? And I was going to throw that right back at Michael and say, Michael, what's the next step? Michael is an activist and important player with the Friends of the Los Angeles River. And I would say that the next step is up to all of us. You know, I summoned everyone to a journey earlier, and we all need to really kind of engage in that journey. And just like the fish go up and down the river, we need to go to our sources of contact and work and inspiration, and really advocate for the restoration of native fish and steelhead in particular as the top of the pyramid to the system. So the next step is really very much up to us. Would you, Wendy, like to talk about where things stand? I know that you're kind of right in the middle of the Fish Passage program, and there's some important planning milestones coming up very soon. I think the project's going to be largely completed by the end of the year. Is that correct? So could you tell us a little bit more about the exact status of the project?
Sure. Yes, we have ongoing efforts to complete the design that we were talking about today through detailed design this year. And then there's ongoing efforts to work on implementation starting next year. The project could take as many as 2 to 3 years to be in full implementation mode. But there's no barriers right now. The funding's available for us to keep on working. And from a watershed-wide perspective and thinking about even other watersheds, this work is really helpful in all of our watersheds because almost every channelized river is working to do some sort of restoration and recovery. And I think the other key message is we are seeing funding for the lower LA River as well in multi-benefit type projects where we're able to use the science that we've learned from this effort to push those things forward too.
And let me say something about what the Arroyo Seco Foundation is doing, because obviously the long-term success of this program is going to depend upon bringing together the ocean and the mountains. And we represent where the fish spawn. And we still think, as a matter of fact, that there are native trout in the San Gabriel Mountains and in the Arroyo Seco itself. So this summer, actually this spring, really right now, the fish are moving because of the rainfall. There hasn't been much rainfall this year, but the conditions actually are very good at the top of the watershed in the Arroyo Seco. And we're going to be sending teams of people up there, we call them trout scouts, looking for fish and examining the conditions in the upper watershed and looking for things like, we're going to map the barriers that exist in the upper watershed, the dams and all of the little check structures and all of the other kinds of barriers there are to fish and wildlife passage. We're going to look at where there's serious invasive species, and we're going to basically try to find the pools and ponds where the fish are likely to congregate. So we're going to survey all that, put it together in a map, and then we're going to work with Stillwater Sciences in order to develop a restoration program. So if there are native trout up there, we're going to improve the conditions for the native trout. And I have to say that after the station fire for the last 10 years, the conditions have been very tough in the upper watershed for fish in general and for native trout in particular. And so we believe there are still trout there, and we want to identify how many. And then we want to work on a recovery program that will actually enhance the conditions for those native trout, but also will consider bringing in native trout from other nearby watersheds that would be appropriate as part of a restoration program. So there's lots of ways for people to get involved directly in the work of restoration in the long run. Now, I noticed there was another question asking about some of the other areas of the LA River. Well, you know, the LA River this is a very big task that we've taken on, and 4.8 miles is a big stretch of the LA River to take and to actually examine how to improve conditions in that area. But there's a lot more of the LA River, as you know. It's probably 25 miles from the confluence down to Long Beach, and then it's 12 miles from the Arroyo Seco confluence up to the San Gabriel Mountains. And so there's a lot of challenges, and that's why we describe it best as a journey that's going to take a long time and a lot of commitment from people consistently to look at how can we take pieces and restore pieces and create a whole here, like putting a puzzle together in order to bring native steelhead back to the Los Angeles River. All right, how about some other questions?
So Sandy Betts asks, hi, my 7-year-old daughter would like to know how long it might take to successfully reintroduce the steelhead. Thank you.
Wow.
Well, I can tell you that it's very hard to pinpoint an exact timeline for that. It'll depend on the efforts of a lot of different organizations and researchers, habitat restoration and similar projects to the one that we're working on now. But I guess I would hope that by the time your 7-year-old daughter has finished college and is a fisheries biologist herself, she'll be studying steelhead in the LA River.
Nice.
That's a great answer, AJ. How about another question? Parker Davis, who's fielding the questions through the chat function, is actually the manager at Haamanga Native Plant Nursery, right at the mouth of the Arroyo Seco as it comes out of the San Gabriel Mountains. So I wanted to get a little plug in there for our native plant nursery. You got another question, Parker?
Yeah, I see a question here from Jessica Madrano. Are there any opportunities to get involved with this project in the stance of field biology or volunteering?
Well, yes, there certainly are. There's been some work done with environmental DNA and that kind of program as well, in terms of identifying, the factors that indicate that the habitat is suitable for native fish, and that's important work that can be pursued. And there's some really excellent people at UCLA who have done some previous work on that. That's the kind of thing that would be very appropriate. Would be assessing the quality of the macroinvertebrates and bugs and all of the critters, as well as the habitat that's necessary for the establishment of these species. So that kind of work, there's lots of good projects, and I'm sure the Council for Watershed Health is going to be pursuing some of those, and so are we. And in our work in the past, we had excellent training from Stillwater Sciences. And I remember, AJ, when you went up into the mountains a couple of years ago and trained some people on how to do stream assessment. That kind of work is very exciting. It's a great way for people to get involved in the long run. And through doing that kind of work, we get a much better understanding of how we can help restore the fish. And we also have a tremendous impact in terms of community outreach, because everybody who goes up there and does that becomes a champion or steward for the fish and for the wildlife in the Los Angeles River system.
Thank you, Tim. I see another question here from Joe Bunk. I've heard it said that much of the pollutants and contaminants in the LA River result from street runoff and litter. While softening the riverbed and making inland waterways more wildlife permeable is downright miraculous, how can these other factors be mitigated?
Well, that's an excellent question. You can't do a restoration without looking at water quality, obviously. And the fact that all of this gunk, this urban gunk, is going into the river really needs to be dealt with. It's one of the important factors that we consider. Wendy, you remember, what was it actually, 13 years ago when we did we restored native arroyo chub into the Arroyo Seco stream near the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, just north and south of the Rose Bowl. And that was a key element that we had to look at in doing that, was because the chub would have great difficulty surviving given all the kind of urban runoff that was going into the basin. So we had to do all sorts of things like swales and trash racks and little bio remediation kind of tree wells and things like that, blocking off the parking lot in order to improve the stream water quality. Would you like to add to that, Wendy?
Yeah, that was an amazing project that won the governor's award, and it was citywide with Pasadena folks and other hillside communities to implement trash capture devices at every storm drain throughout the city, in tandem with the stream restoration and the reintroduction of the chub. The other key thing is the city of LA, the county of LA, and many other municipalities are working on water quality improvement in our drainages or channels, and are really complying with regulatory requirements to improve water quality in all of our watersheds. So it's a huge effort, and I think the city and the county and others are helping to bring the funding as well as work with the communities on things to improve our water quality in our neighborhoods. And the Stillwater Sciences team is working with the Water Research Project, Eric Stein and others on water quality related studies and actions to actually get better indicators in place for the fish as they need really good water quality to thrive.
Thanks, Wendy. I see another good question here from Andy Lipkiss. What about the impact of the LA River Master Plan? Does it acknowledge the cornerstone importance of steelhead habitat restoration as a cornerstone of the plan?
Let me first say, hi, Andy. And thanks for asking such a tough question. I candidly think there's a lot of problems with the LA River Master Plan, and that it doesn't emphasize enough natural restoration of the stream. I know that Liana is working on that, as a matter of fact, and is calling together a meeting next week of some of the activists associated with Friends of the Los Angeles River. Would you like to comment on that question, Liliana?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I think that it says in the beginning of the plan that the plan is not recommending naturalization or concrete removal, which poses a big issue specifically for projects like this. We are working with some other groups like Heal the Bay and East Yards for Environmental Justice to have an advocacy training specifically on the county master plan, what's being presented and what isn't being presented, and providing some tools for folks to make a public comment on the plan. I know Michael just posted the link in the chat, so if anyone is interested in learning more about the county master plan and what's being presented there, feel free to click that link and register for the event. It's going to be Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So happy to have more in-depth conversations about it there.
Thank you, Lily.
I'm here. Can we hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Angel Pinedo. I am an environmental educator for the Arroyo Seco Foundation. I'm also leading the project into our volunteer service for the Trout Scouts and for Steelhead Spring. We're looking into creating a citizen science project where we get any volunteers to help us look for them. We're following guidelines by the Fish and Wildlife Department's manual for surveying fish, which can go simple as just observing them from the stream bank using some polarized glasses, or for some more adventurous folks out there, because you're out there, getting in the water and looking between the boulders and all of that. So we look forward to hearing from you if you're interested in doing that, and we can get that started.
Thanks, Angel. I see another question here from Sarah Rascone. She asked, does this study look at or take into account reduced river flows that are being explored as proposed by SCCWRP? I'm gonna unmute Wendy.
Wendy.
Hey, Sarah. Yes, it does. And in fact, our study incorporates data and some of the modeling work that SCWRP has done, Eric Stein and his group. It's not complete yet. It's a 2-year study, so it's ongoing. But basically, the answer is yes. This project does involve coordination with the water folks and the water board in terms of minimum flows needed for fish migration and the window of opportunity for the fish to move during the winter seasons post-storm.
Thanks, Wendy. I see one or two more questions left here from Barry Grubb. Is there any plan to clean up the river around Balboa Lake?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the status of cleaning up around Balboa Lake is. Obviously, there's ongoing efforts that community groups are doing that does stream cleanups. And of course, FOLAR does a big stream cleanup every year, and the Heal the Bay does another stream cleanup every year that actually includes the LA River as well as the beaches. So there are these ongoing efforts that are done as well by neighborhood associations and groups like that. So I keep my eye open for activity like that in the San Fernando Valley. All right. Do you have any, how about a final question, Parker? Is there one more question? Because we've gotten a little bit past 1, and we kind of, because this is a lunchtime meeting, we wanted to kind of keep it around 1 o'clock. Apologize for the technical glitches in the beginning, particularly with regard to showing the video. And we're going to show the video again, but how about one more question before we leave?
Sure. Actually, I see a question here from Amanda Smith, who asks, how do we sign up for the Trout Scout? Sorry if I missed it just then. I was signing up for the event next week.
Well, thanks very much for asking that. You know, get in contact, look at the arroyoseco.org webpage, and there'll be information there about how you can sign up for the Trout Scout activity and for other kind of recovery and cleanup efforts on the LA River and the Arroyo Seco. All right. Well, thanks very much. I think it's really been an inspiring meeting, and I love all the great participants that were here today. I don't know if you knew some of the names that people making comments are really the all-stars of the LA River and of environmental protection in Southern California as well. And so I want to salute them and all of the river stewards that there are, and to encourage those of you who aren't river stewards yet to become river stewards, because we need your activity if we're going to be successful in the future. So with that, thanks so much to the California Wildlife Conservation Board for funding this project, and to the Council for Watershed Health for heading it up, and to the Stillwater Sciences for the excellent science and technical work that they're doing. And thanks so much to Sean for the outstanding video that you've created that I think really captures the essence of what we're trying to do in a very short 3 minutes and 14 seconds. So we really appreciate that. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to show the video as we go out.
When you think of Los Angeles, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Sunshine? Movies? Traffic? That's what most people would say. But I really think about the river. I think of the wildlife and biology that used to flourish throughout our great city. I think of the fish, the native fish like the steelhead trout that used to enjoy the LA River. In recent years, there's been a new focus on revitalizing the river, but often the key element for that is forgotten: the fish. Is it possible that native fish can find their way back to the river? Will we welcome them back? Native fish in the LA River, particularly the steelhead trout, began to dwindle just about 100 years ago. For several million years before that, the trout would swim back and forth from the salty Pacific Ocean up the river to the cold, fresh water in the San Gabriel Mountains to spawn a new generation. But as the human population exploded, people crowded in on the river, and then occasionally, floods came. Without any concern for fish and wildlife, dams were built, and the river was lined with concrete channels. There wasn't any room for fish anymore. As a result, native fish disappeared, and the prime species, the Southern Steelhead, is endangered today. But now, guided by scientists, restoration design engineers, nonprofits, and governmental agencies, the LA River Fish Passage and Habitat Program is studying how to bring native fish back to life right in downtown Los Angeles. A 4.8-mile stretch of the river from the Elysian Valley to Washington Boulevard. Can the barren concrete channel be modified to restore stream habitat and bring back fish? The experts are studying flow, habitat, barriers, water quality, and all the elements necessary to let the river live again. A flourishing, more natural stream zone and a path to the upper river tributaries like the Arroyo Seco and Tujunga Canyon can help create a more sustainable river and enrich us and future generations. It's a big dream. It could be the key test of the LA River restoration efforts. Please contact us to be informed of our progress and learn how you can get involved.